When I opened the familiar safe and saw the empty compartment, not a single bill left, I didn't scream. I didn't panic. I just stood there still as a statue, staring into the cold void, as if it might offer an apology on its own. $14,000. Not savings, not investments. Just emergency cash, the lifeline I kept for myself in case the world forgot me, or worse, deliberately ignored my existence. At that moment, my father walked into the kitchen, a dish towel slung over his shoulder, as if this were his house. He didn't glance at the safe, didn't ask what I was doing. He just said, with a shamelessly casual tone, "We gave it to Hailey. She's about to be a mother." Those last 4 words, paired with the relief in his eyes, squeezed my chest tighter than any curse could. I stepped back, my hands ice cold, despite the heater humming in the room. Each word echoed in my head like an accusation. No one asked for permission. No one consulted me. No warning. They opened my safe, took my money, and gave it to my sister, as if it were only natural, as if I'd never been the owner of my own life. My name is Claire, 36 years old, living in Portland, co-founder of a small tech company, specializing in software infrastructure and data security for small businesses. I live with Maya, the woman who's been by my side through 2 major depressive episodes, an office fire, and years of balancing work and family ties. We're not married. My mother still calls Maya my roommate. I'm the eldest in the family. Hailey, my sister, is 6 years younger, married, and about to have her first child. She loves posting everything on social media, from her morning latte to the neighbor's cat napping. She's never apologized. Never said thank you unless it was photographed and posted with a hashtag. My parents, Douglas and Marianne, are traditional, or at least they cling to the facade of tradition. My father was a high school teacher, strict, dry, and rarely generous with praise. My mother was a bank employee until she retired early due to arthritis. They love talking about family as a core value, but rarely act as if each family member has their own emotions. This Christmas, for the first time, I invited the family to my home, a small, dark wood house with a fireplace and warm yellow lights. I'm not one for festivities, but I thought if I created the atmosphere this time, if I brought enough warmth, maybe they'd remember how we used to love each other. I prepared for 3 days, hand-picked decorations, strung lights around the eaves, bought a real Christmas tree, not the plastic kind we'd had for years, and hung every ornament, every ribbon myself. I cooked the roast my father liked, the pastries my mother once taught me, and prepared gifts for each niece and nephew, kids who only remembered my name when prompted. They arrived late. Hailey laughed and live-streamed from the doorstep. My father didn't comment on the house, just said the chairs were too low. My mother sat at the corner of the table, whispering to Hailey about a distant relative's divorce. No one asked how I was doing. No one said thank you. Every smile felt like a rehearsed performance. When I invited them to stay 2 extra nights, after Hailey mentioned her home's plumbing was broken, they just nodded. No, are you sure? No hesitation, as if it were expected. I smiled. I cleaned. I quietly gathered the wrapping paper trash. I thought, if I don't make this my problem, maybe they'll see their own value. But no, they didn't see anything. They never had. When the house was empty, when the last footsteps faded from the porch, when the dried pine needles began falling onto the hardwood floor, I walked to the storage room. I opened the safe, not out of worry, just habit-like, checking if the windows are locked before bed. The electronic lock clicked with its familiar snap. I leaned down, and then, emptiness. I re-entered the code, opened it again. No mistake. The money was gone, neatly, cleanly, no signs of tampering, no forced entry. It wasn't stolen. It was taken. I stood there for a long time. Time froze like the first snow of the season. My chest tightened, and when I turned, I saw my father walk in. He didn't look at me, just said as if I'd reminded him of something he forgot. We gave it to Hailey. She's about to be a mother. I don't remember how I left the room. I only remember sitting by the coat rack pulling out my phone. Maya was upstairs bathing the cat. Outside, snow began to fall lightly. I called my lawyer. He picked up after the second ring. "Hello, Claire." "What's wrong?" I spoke slowly without raising my voice. No rush. The emergency cash in the safe was taken. They gave it to my sister, without permission, without asking me. He was silent. Then he replied, "I'll start preparing a file tonight." I nodded, though he couldn't see me. When I hung up, I didn't cry. I opened my laptop, checked every bank account, every service in my name. I began writing letters, a series of them, sent without a trace of emotion. Just facts, just precision, just action. No anger. Just I saw, and I could no longer pretend I didn't. That Christmas I didn't lose money. I lost the illusion that I belonged there. And that night, as snow began to cover the porch steps, I started reclaiming myself step by step, word by word, period by period. But I didn't know yet that this was just the beginning of the collapse. So much more beyond an empty safe would unravel in the days to come. The next morning I sat at my desk, sunlight streaming through the white curtains, cold and quiet like my father's gaze last night. The laptop hummed to life. Bank tabs, admin accounts, and internal emails lined up in a row, familiar to the point of unease. I didn't know exactly what I was looking for. But each mouse click, each login was a step toward a search not criminal, but deeply personal. I wasn't hunting for evidence to sue. I was tracing my own footprints to see when exactly I'd been erased from my own life. The first bank account I opened was my mother's secondary account. I was still a co-signer. The balance was low, but not unusual. The transaction history was long, and I noticed a withdrawal nearly $4,000 for installment payments on a garden furniture set last April. I remembered transferring money to her because she said it was for urgent hospital bills. There was no hospital, just furniture. I opened an old spreadsheet. File name Family Shark Support, System Temp, XLSX, last edited 9 months ago. That was when I deleted the line for helping Hailey buy a car, because she'd said I bought the car with my own salary, don't take credit for it. I looked at the file name and felt like a fool. The first memory that surfaced was Hailey's wedding 3 years ago. She wanted a beach ceremony, not fancy, but Instagram-worthy. My mother called me near midnight. Hailey doesn't want to owe anyone. Can you help me out? I transferred $9,800 to the joint account my mother controlled. A week later at the dress fitting, I overheard Hailey joke, Claire's not married, no kids, so at least she's useful for something. At that wedding, I wasn't seated at the main table. I sat near the back exit where they kept the leftover food in plastic cups. The second time, I paid part of the cost to repair my parents' house. They called one July afternoon saying, "The pipes burst and no one else can help. You're our only hope." I sent $200. 2 weeks later, Hailey posted a photo of my father sitting at a new table holding a cocktail captioned, "Relaxing summer, thank you life." I commented, "Nice new table." She deleted my comment within 3 minutes. Then there was Hailey's car. I co-signed the loan. She defaulted because she bought an SUV beyond her means. I paid off the remaining $11,000 after my father said, "You're the only one with a stable credit score." The next day, Hailey posted a selfie by the steering wheel captioning it, "Nothing beats the feeling of independence." I stared at the screen, then closed the app, laughing, not sure if it was funny or just painfully absurd. I used to think they asked me because I was reliable. Now I know they asked because I was easy to ignore. No one asked for my help. They just assumed I'd provide it. And every time I helped, my contributions were erased, as if my efforts tainted the beautiful narrative of self-reliance they were staging. I pulled my chair closer, opened a second monitor, and logged into the company system. The small tech company I co-founded in 2014, where I poured my energy every line of code, every late-night meeting. That company currently runs the entire digital infrastructure for my family. The Wi-Fi at my parents' house, I manage it. The accounting software for my uncle's business, I pay for it. Cloud cameras, smart locks, email, DNS, all registered under my name. I never asked for payment, never demanded credit, because I thought family doesn't keep score. But I forgot one thing. They didn't keep score because I was the one paying for everything. I opened my email, drafted the first letter to my lawyer, request initiation of asset separation process. Review transactions from 2020 to clarify beneficiaries related to family. Begin transferring cash fund protections to a personal trust, no sharing. I signed, sent. The second email went to my financial advisor, then to my accountant. Finally, I opened the company system dashboard and created a new list, family-related infrastructure proposed deactivation. I typed each line coldly, precisely. No hatred, no regret, just clarity. I stopped when it was dark. Maya walked in with a cup of peppermint tea and placed it on the desk. "Are you sure you want to go this route?" I nodded. "I'm not retaliating. I'm removing myself from a game they've been playing without telling me. Maya didn't say more. She just placed her hand on my shoulder silently. That gesture was enough to make me feel someone still saw me. At 10:47 p.m., my phone buzzed. A call from Hailey. I didn't plan to answer, but I knew if I didn't, she'd call my mother. Then my mother would call Maya, and Maya would have to bear the weight. I tapped the green button. Hailey's voice came through agitated and breaking. "What are you doing? Why did you lock the house accounts? The cameras, the Wi-Fi? Why did you cancel the kids' Netflix? What's wrong with you?" I waited for her to stop, then said softly, very softly, "You should check your inbox." I hung up, didn't wait for another word. I set the phone down. My eyes didn't well up. My heart didn't race. I wasn't angry. I wasn't relieved. I just felt clear. Cruelly clear. It wasn't that they changed, they were never different. I thought losing $14,000 was the biggest shock of my life. But no. The real shock was realizing I'd never truly been counted as part of my own family. And now, with the first email sent, I knew a system had begun to crack, one I'd unknowingly upheld for 2 decades. It wouldn't collapse immediately. But I wouldn't hold it up anymore either. Because for the first time I chose to hold myself. When they started texting me at 3 in the morning, not one asked, "Are you okay?" Or when did this start, they only asked, "Why can't we connect to the Wi-Fi?" The collapse didn't come with a bang. It came with the relentless ping of messages, the barrage of calls lighting up my phone, and Maya's worried glance when she saw me sitting upright at my computer for 4 hours without touching my tea. I started with the simplest task, logging out family devices from the cloud management system my company owns. The security cameras outside my parents' house disconnected. The smart door lock switched to local mode. The thermostat reset to default. My uncle's company email blocked from internal servers. I didn't delete. I didn't destroy. I just let go of the sustain button. Things they thought ran themselves suddenly faltered. A few hours later, Hailey texted Sis the cameras at Mom and Dad's are down. "Can you check them?" I didn't reply. 3 hours later, Netflix isn't working. The kids are freaking out. "Please help!" I silenced my phone, moved to the next task, disconnecting all family phone accounts from the data plan in my name. They had 72 hours to claim ownership, or the lines would be suspended. I was no longer the point of contact. Not the one they called when they forgot a Wi-Fi password, or a bank account failed verification. I was no longer the sister who knows everything. I was a woman cutting the strings after 2 decades of holding up a bridge no one saw me crossing. Maya walked in at 9 p.m., carrying a mug of hot chocolate and a blanket. "You haven't eaten since noon," she said, gentle, not accusatory. I looked at her, feeling caught doing something wrong, but I knew she understood. She didn't ask what I was doing. She sat beside me, leaning lightly against my shoulder, like a final anchor between me and guilt. I wasn't doing this out of anger. I was doing it because I'd been silent too long. For 36 years, I never refused anything they asked money effort presents, and every time I gave, they saw me as more invisible. I didn't want revenge. I wanted them to live without a crutch. The next message came from my mother. "Dear, your father can't open the garage gate. Can you check the system?" I stared at the text and felt something strange. Not sadness, not anger, just emptiness. I used to rush between meetings to answer messages like that. Now I was too exhausted to continue. I replied with one line. "No, period. I'm no longer in charge of the system." 3 minutes later, "What do you mean by that?" I didn't respond. I opened the management list again. The Netflix, Disney plus HBO. Max accounts all unlinked from my card. I double-checked, then logged out. By bedtime, my phone showed 5 missed calls from Hailey. 1 from my father. 1 from my uncle. And a video call from my mother I didn't answer. Instead, I set the phone on the table, turned off the living room lights, lay on the sofa, and pulled the blanket over me. Maya lay beside me, silent, holding my hand in the dark. I didn't speak, but in my mind I heard my father's voice from Christmas. "We gave it to Hailey. She's about to be a mother." Just 7 words, but heavy as a verdict you're only needed for what you provide. The next morning I woke earlier than usual. My inbox had nearly 30 emails from family. 1 message from my cousin Ellie, just a short question. "What's going on?" I didn't reply yet. I made coffee, turned on the computer, and began disconnecting the secondary bank account where I'd kept an emergency fund for family crises. I transferred everything to a new trust account secured with two-factor authentication. I printed statements, highlighted unexplained withdrawals from the past 3 years, created a detailed spreadsheet. I didn't know if I'd use it, but for the first time, I wanted control over what was mine. At noon, Hailey called via video. Her profile picture flashed repeatedly, then disappeared, then flashed again. She was never patient, she never had to be. I thought of that as I looked at the list of devices still accessing my company's office system, including my uncle's financial server. I revoked access immediately. I knew they wouldn't understand what was happening, but I also knew they never asked how those things worked. They just needed them to run, and I was the only one making them run. By afternoon, my mother called. This time, I answered. "Claire, you don't have to do this. This is too much." "Don't you think about your father, Hailey, the kids?" I kept my voice calm. "Mom, I've thought about everyone for 30 years. This is the first time I'm thinking about myself. I don't understand. That's exactly why I have to do this." I hung up. Not out of anger, but because I knew if I continued, I'd slip back into my old role explaining soothing, promising. I didn't want to go back. That evening, as I reviewed the list of devices accessing my parents' home system, a message came from Hailey. "You're crazy. Do you know the whole family's in chaos?" I replied for the first time in 2 days. "You didn't lose a sister. You lost a system. And I'm not rebooting it." I sent it. No emoji. No exclamation mark. No apology. Just a simple statement. A raw truth. Because I was no longer part of that system, and they'd have to learn to live without me. But I didn't expect that the real collapse was just beginning, and the true crisis would come from something I never wanted to happen. When I received an email from a head nurse with an unfamiliar name sent to an old technical mailbox tied to the admin system I'd stepped away from nearly a month ago, I knew something had happened. The subject line was brief: urgent case, need access to patient records for Douglas H. It took me less than 5 seconds to realize it was my father. I sat up straight. The laptop screen still showed the spreadsheet of unverified family account transactions. My hand held a warm cup of tea, but my index finger moved the cursor to open the email. The message was short. Patient Douglas H., currently in ICU at Providence Hospital. Electronic record system locked, unable to access medical history insurance or linked treatment data. System indicates admin verification required. Please respond urgently. No phone number, no explanation. Just a situation my father, the man who once told me maybe you don't need Christmas anymore, was lying in a hospital bed somewhere, and the medical tech system they relied on, which I built, was now inaccessible. And they'd sent the email to an old technical mailbox, like tossing a bottle into the sea hoping someone would read it. I was that someone. I sat motionless before the screen for a moment. In my mind, I didn't see Douglas on a hospital bed, but him with the dish towel over his shoulder on Christmas, stepping out of the kitchen like the true owner saying, "We gave the money to Hailey." I thought I'd feel relief, or coldness, or at least indifference. But instead, there was something else vague, and far deeper, a nameless sadness. It didn't spill into tears or choke my throat. It just existed, like a shadow standing behind me, not forcing me to act, but not letting me turn away either. I opened the old system folder where I kept backups of the patient record structure and emergency data recovery protocols. I didn't log in as Claire. I used an intermediary technical account, a backup created for when the main admin couldn't access the system. Now I used it to shield them from the consequences of my withdrawal. Maya walked in as I was drafting instructions for the hospital. She looked at me, then at the screen. "What's going on?" I didn't answer right away. I sent the attachment containing the restart access protocol, two-factor authentication codes for the hospital, and temporary access instructions for the treatment team. I hit send, then turned to Maya. "My dad had a mild stroke," I said, voice low and steady. "The hospital can't access his records insurance, everything I used to run. And you're fixing it." She didn't judge me, just asked. But I saw something in her eyes, not doubt, but a genuine concern. I nodded, anonymously. No trace of me. Just getting them access. Maya sat in the chair beside me, lightly touching my arm. "You still love them, don't you?" I shook my head, slowly. No, I don't think it's love. Then what is it? I took a deep breath, looked into her eyes, and said slowly, because I don't want anyone to suffer, just because I chose to let go. She was silent, then nodded slightly, and squeezed my hand, saying nothing more. I don't know what happened at the hospital afterward. No messages came from the family. No thanks, no blame. Just a prolonged silence, and I understood they still didn't know who had helped. They probably thought the system auto-recovered, or someone else happened to know how. They wouldn't know because I left no trace. For the first time in my life, I helped without needing credit or forgiveness. I just helped as a human who could do the right thing, even if no one knew. 2 days later, I sat on the balcony with Maya. The February air carried the damp smell of rotting leaves. She was reading a book. I was silent, watching the twinkling lights at the end of the street. Someone else's house, not mine, not theirs. I turned to her and asked softly, "Am I wrong?" She looked up, studying me for a long moment. "No," she said. "You're just doing what's right in your own way." But I still helped them. Yes, because you're kind. Not because they deserve it, but because you don't want to become someone else. I nodded. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel torn between resentment and duty. My heart felt level, neither drifting nor surging. No one needed to know I was the one who did it. No need to cry. No need to go back. Just knowing I didn't let anyone suffer because of my choices. That evening, when everything quieted down, I walked to the study window. The porch light still glowed faintly. The Christmas tree was long gone, but the string lights remained boxed, uncastored, as if part of me was still hesitating between closing off or holding on to something. I looked outside. The street was quiet. No cars, no voices, just the wind. I touched the cold glass lightly, then closed my eyes, and for the first time I felt no resentment. Not because I forgot, but because I'd moved past it. And I didn't expect that this forgiveness would be the prelude to the fiercest battle yet, when my family returned not to apologize, but to attack. I never thought I'd be the target of a smear campaign, by my own family. Yet that morning, as I opened my email to check routine security documents, I saw an unfamiliar subject line: request for service restoration and compensation for personal damages, from a law firm representing my mother. The letter was 4 pages long, written in cold, sharp language, half threatening, half hypocritical. They accused me of disruptive behavior, suggestive of mental instability, cutting off digital systems that family members relied on for daily operations, and causing severe emotional harm to elderly family members. The opening line declared Ms. Claire H. exhibits signs of erratic behavior requiring legal intervention. I sat, motionless, before the screen for nearly 10 minutes. Not because I was shocked, but because I had anticipated this. I knew what kind of people they were. I just didn't expect they'd go so far as to turn me into the problem to avoid facing their own consequences. I printed the letter, placed it on the desk, then opened a new tab, my evidence folder, where I'd saved everything: access logs, financial support records, email exchanges, messages about unconditional help, every expense, every confirmation email, every chat from Hailey Sis. Make sure to transfer it by Monday. We can't manage otherwise. Or my father, can you co-sign the loan for me? The bank won't accept my profile. I had it all, but I never had a thank you. That afternoon, I got a message from Ellie, my cousin on my mother's side, who I was close to in college, but drifted from because she didn't want to be caught between sides. I need to ask, did you really cut off all technical support? They're saying you've lost control. I didn't reply with a text. I called. Ellie answered almost instantly. What's going on, Claire? Her voice was worried, genuine. I took a deep breath. Ellie. I haven't lost control. I'm clearer than ever. I just stopped supporting a system I'm no longer part of. I heard you cut everything off, threw their house into chaos. They're saying you're unhinged. I laughed softly, though nothing was funny. The funny thing, I ran all of it for 10 years, no pay, no credit. And when I stopped, they called me crazy. Ellie was silent. I continued. I'm not suing, not yelling, not retaliating. I just disconnected. And they fell apart. Claire, I believe you. I didn't respond right away. A strange emotion stirred in me like a faint yellow light after days of gray rain. Thank you, I said and meant it. Just one person understanding. That's enough. I'm on your side, no matter what happens. The next day I sent Ellie a copy of the evidence, but not just to her. I curated a small group neutral relatives who might not have heard both sides. I sent a folder titled Transparency Without Excuses, no comments attached, no justifications. Just one line, I don't need you to take my side. I just need you to know the truth. 3 days later, Maya told me her friend who used to work with my sister saw Hailey post a vague Facebook status when someone chooses to abandon family over a few mistakes that's their true character. Below were dozens of comments, mostly from my mother's friends, names familiar from childhood, Aunt Ruby, Uncle Scott, Aunt Jennifer. One wrote, "It's heartbreaking to see a daughter lose her gratitude." I didn't react, didn't get angry. I just felt distant. They didn't know the truth, and most didn't want to. They wanted a simple story Claire changed. Claire's not who she was. Claire's unstable. The truth was messier. The truth was Claire was never fully seen. On the 5th day after the first threatening letter, I got a call from my lawyer. "Claire, they haven't filed a lawsuit yet, but they sent a mediation request. They want you to restore the systems within 7 days in exchange for not publicizing damaging information." I laughed. A short, dry, stinging laugh. Do I need to respond? I can draft a formal rejection. "No," I said. "Don't send anything." He paused. "What do you want to do?" I lifted my cold tea to my lips. Nothing. Let them feel the void when the person they relied on disappears. He nodded over the phone. "I understand." That evening I sat with Maya, rereading the first letter my father ever wrote me when I was 8, tucked in an old book I'd kept by chance. The slanted handwriting ink smudged by time. "You're the one I trust most." I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. Not because I wanted to forget, but because I understood trust doesn't mean respect. And trust doesn't hold if it's only one way. I didn't regret it. But I knew they weren't done. I heard the car pull up from a distance. Not because it was loud, but because my body had grown attuned to sensing their presence even before they knocked. 3 people stood on the porch, my father, mother, and Hailey. Dressed neatly, standing upright like a staged family meeting. No gifts, no anger in their faces, but no hint of an apology either. I stood behind the wooden door, not opening it right away. Maya stepped forward. She gently lifted the curtain and opened the door just a crack. Didn't invite them in. Just said, "You can stand there." I stepped out behind her silent. I didn't avoid anyone's gaze. Didn't seek it either. I just waited to see who'd speak first. My father did. "You look tired, Claire." I didn't respond. Tired, maybe, but not because of them. Because I'd carried too much that wasn't mine for too long. My mother spoke next, her voice trembling slightly. "We're not here to fight. We're here to talk." About what I asked, my voice calm as a still lake. About you cutting everything off. About you throwing everyone into chaos. About you pushing this family to the edge of breaking. She looked straight at me on that last word. I paused, then said slowly, "The family didn't break because I stopped. It broke because it only stood on one person's support, and no one noticed." My father's face hardened. "This family wouldn't survive without you." I nodded slightly, not in agreement. "That's the truth," I said. "But if a family collapses just because one person steps away, that's not a family. It's a dependency model. And I'm no longer in it." Hailey stepped forward. She was always the quickest to lose her temper. "So, you're just erasing everything." Over a few small things, I looked at my sister. Looked long. Not angry. Not hurt. Just the gaze of someone who'd hoped and let go. You call them small things because you've never paid the price. I'm not leaving because of money, Hailey. I'm leaving because I was never seen as a person. Only a resource. No one spoke. No arguments. No tears. They just stood there as if hearing something they never thought would be said so bluntly. I continued, my voice steady as breath. "You didn't lose services. You lost me." Maya stepped slightly to the side as if ready to close the door at any moment. My mother tried to soften her tone. "We were wrong. but you don't have to make this permanent. I nodded. Maybe not. But the way you've reacted, the way you've attacked, instead of admitted, made it necessary. I wasn't there to win. I was there because I'd stayed silent too long. And now I spoke to end it. I looked at them one last time, then said softly, I'm not angry anymore. But I'm not here anymore either. Maya gently pulled the door. It closed slowly, soundlessly. And they didn't knock again. A few days later, a message came from Hailey. No subject, no greeting. I know you were the one who helped when Dad had the stroke. No one said it, but I know. I'm learning to live on my own. I read the message 3 times. Not to confirm the words, but to search for any trace of calculation or deceit. I found none. I didn't reply, but I smiled. Faintly, not victorious, not forgiving. Just my heart felt still for the first time. That afternoon I stood with Maya in the open kitchen. Early spring sunlight slipped through the window, casting across the bare white wall I'd never decorated in years. I thought about buying a painting, maybe a landscape, maybe abstract. It didn't matter, as long as it was my choice not to please anyone else. No more messages, no more requests for help. No broken Wi-Fi, no faulty cameras, no parents calling Claire, this is broken. No Hailey asking, can you give me one more week? Just silence. And I realized silence has its own sound. The sound of freedom. Maya placed her hand on my shoulder. Are you at peace today? I turned to her, the light warming her cheek. Yes, I said. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm truly living for myself. Maya smiled. She didn't ask more. We stood there quietly like 2 people who'd weathered a storm no one else could understand the weight of. And I knew not because everything was okay, but because I'd stopped straining to keep things okay for others. No more burdens, no more systems, no more expectations. Just me whole enough and no longer needing anyone's validation. My story isn't a family tragedy. It's a journey of rediscovering my self-worth after years of being seen as an invisible tool. I've learned that true kinship shouldn't rest on silent, one-sided sacrifices. A real family is where people are seen, heard, and loved, not for their utility, but for who they are. I'm not sharing this for pity. I'm sharing it so those carrying a burden like mine know you have the right to say enough to set boundaries to live without proving anything. If this story makes you think if you've ever felt like the only one holding up a system with no gratitude, you're not alone. Thank you for listening to the end of this journey. If you want to join me for more profound, authentic stories, please follow the channel and share your thoughts below. I'd love to hear your story. See you in the next journey.